We'll call the meeting to order for tonight, and not seeing anyone for public comment, we will scoot on down to the next item of business. If someone comes in, we'll just stop and rewind a little bit. But the first thing that on our agenda is the approval of the minutes. Of course, we've all had time to look at those. Do I have a motion for approval of the minutes of the last meeting?
So moved.
And do I have a second?
Second.
And are there any questions or corrections?
We didn't meet long enough to have much meeting.
Well, that's right. We were on the speedy meeting list last time. Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes for last month, say aye. Aye. And those pass. Okay, and the next one is the approval of the vouchers. We've had a chance to look at those. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any questions about them? Okay, hearing none. All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
And that passes. And before we go to approval of the monthly reports, Mr. General Manager, I think we have an introduction to make.
We do. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Our good friend who we've known since, I think before he was born. It was the first time I met him through his mom. And Dusty has been the accounting manager at Lenoir City for 5 years. He got his degree from UT and then went on and got his master's degree. He made it clear, he told me that he graduated, what was it, a 3, 4, 5 or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, every time he tells me that number goes up. And he also then spent 5 years as director of accounting and finance and management administration at Harriman. And we are thrilled to have him here. It's a low bar for him to meet from the one we had before. So we look forward to, for all of his experience, to add to this very important aspect of what we do here. I've given him the night off on the financials. I told him he can just come in and observe, and unless I said something terribly wrong, he doesn't have to comment. But if I do, jump in, because we always just try to give the correct information. But we're thrilled to have him here. I'm not much on his beard, but he's that got trimmed up since yesterday. Yeah.
What's wrong with these people?
Well, it's all the hair on top of his head that goes with it that's really got me. So we're thrilled he's here, and that's from the bottom of my heart. We're really fortunate to have someone of his caliber. So if we get to the financials, you should have this expense summary in front of you, and if you look at it, for September we're in the negative. And as I mentioned in my comments last month, many of you will remember, the electric department's financials for September, which are the current statements that you're looking at, because it takes that long before everything runs through. And that's really what we're addressing tonight, are the financial statements for September. And I told you that they would likely show a negative, and as expected, these current statements confirm that. What's that primarily due to? Well, as I said last time, we have 3 payrolls twice a year, and this is one of them. So our current reduction in a net loss or a net margin loss of 187 matches up with what we did last year. We had a net margin loss of 226. So looking forward, this is not unexpected, but looking forward, I want you to know that October is historically, along with April, are the 2 months where the sales, KWH sales, are depressed because of mild weather. When we have 1 day, 1 hour of the 720 hours in a month, 1 hour of really cold or really hot, whatever, everybody turns something on, whatever causes that sets the peak. And from September, when we had that PowerPoint on load factor, the higher the load factor, the better. The lower the load factor, it's not good. So when we have a demand that comes up and grabs us, and we don't have the KWH sales to support that, we're always in the negative. Todd, what were you, 48,000 this month on your DVR? I think we were
Yes,
saw
sir.
that on the 3rd of
Yes, sir.
October, and I think so that saved us 48,000. We would have been 48,000 more than that. So I'm just trying to get you ready. And next month, I'm going to say, as I told you last month, October is not going to look good, and April when we get to that. Now, we are going to experience the effects of TVA's pandemic relief credit, which we've enjoyed for 3 years. That goes away next month, so that's like a double hit. That's 50 to 60,000 that we would have seen savings from this pandemic relief credit. We're not going to see that anymore. So it's going to be a real double hit, and I'm thinking that will be flat. So start at zero and then plus or minus maybe 50 or 60,000 either way. I don't anticipate anything a great reduction, but I don't see where there's going to be a great gain. We're not going to see that until November when we do our November statements. And you won't review those until January. So the board approved a rate action in June because we anticipated the TVA doing away, discontinuing this pandemic credit, and we needed to make that up. TVA reduced that. They even raised their wholesale rates to us because of what their experiences and everybody is this unprecedented jump in material and operating costs because of this inflation factor. So that action ought to be fully implemented. That rate action ought to be fully implemented and reflected in our November statements. And as a result of that, I'm anticipating an increase in our load factor, which will help because the weather will help us that. And we ought to look for a real good positive net margin. That's what I'm expecting. And always that is contingent on the storms and the weather. Yeah, they're the major variables that we have to deal with. So you'll review those statements in January. I anticipate every statement after that, we will continue to get more healthy, in terms of net income. But the budget, if you look at the budget, we're sunk on that. I'm just telling you right now that is no way we're coming back from what was forecasted, and there was a lot of reasons for that. Our revenue and power costs just for year to date is down 14%. That's over 900,000. So all that to say is I'm focusing on net income, and when you look over this as forecasted year to date, that is not relevant anymore. It will be relevant for operating costs, but for power costs, it's that's blown. It's much more aggressive than the reality that's going to show. So that's what I've got, and I can certainly talk more about that if anybody has any questions. Water is doing great. We're $229,000 actual, and we budgeted 205, so we're right on target with a $24,000 plus above what we budgeted for. Any questions that I can ask?
I've got one. So given the delta of about 4.8 that we're short so far this year in revenue, what, from the budget standpoint, what are the things that we're going to do to maybe cut or pull back to make that up?
Well, there's several things. One of the major leads on that is we have suffered from right of way, which is our one of the key factors to the level of service that we provide. We keep the trees trimmed out of the lines, and we've had such a difficult time, which dates back 2 years ago. We did so well. Our net income 2 years ago, ending in June, was 3.9 million. We had a great year, and there's several factors to that. Part of those factors were that we didn't have the contract crews in place to cut the right of way. That's because they just weren't available. And when we finally, in negotiation, and that took money to get them to bring that back up, we tried to make up time. Remember, we've been making up time last year, and we've been making up time this year. So far this year, we're 425,000 ahead of where we were at this time last year on nothing but right-of-way costs. So we have now plateaued on that. So where we were running, I think they were running 610s. Now, that's going to get back more normal. And I see the, the, the maintenance, which will be reflected maintenance and operations, that cost will drop compared to what it was. And of course, that's dollar for dollar on the bottom line to not only help net income, but also help cash flow. That's our major area in doing that. And always we value out. This is the worst time of the year for us because of we had a bad summer. Great for our customers, which is good, but a spike kills us. And we still are making up from the $1 million in the storms that we didn't receive a penny for. And that just left us. So that we're still working on making that up. I see us coming out of this in a very positive way going forward because of the action that we took back in June that for electric became effective in the month of October. And we'll see the full impact of that when we look at the November statements.
Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Any other questions? Okay, we need a motion to pass the approval of the September reports.
So moved.
And second, and all in favor say yes. Yes. And that motion passes. And then, Mr. Fay, the project status report. Will you go over those with us?
Yes, ma'am, I'll be glad to. And with the board's permission, since Todd is intimate on this, and I'm sorry, but I didn't even give you a heads up. Do you want
That's
me to
fine.
take this or
No,
do you want
sir.
to take it?
I'm good.
Okay.
So, as you say, we'll say, yeah, there we go. 3 projects we're currently tracking there on the electric department. The first of those is over here on Crispin Road in Claxton area that we're now complete job to rebuild it. It was a line that was way off the road, one of our historically worst performing areas. It was off the road, difficult to access in the trees and stuff. We moved it to the road. It should be much better, more reliable service for those customers. All that went well, is now fully complete, ahead of schedule, which was anticipated to be scheduled completed by next month, and we just now finished it in the last couple of weeks. So, second road work over there, Smith Road down in Olive Springs area. We're just really getting into the full construction of that. Probably noted last month we were kind of pre-construction clearing right away. We've now finished the right of way clearing for the new construction there, and actually started setting poles down there. That's one that our largest capital project of the year, which will go through probably about March of next year, we're anticipating. But I'll have no reason to believe it shouldn't go well and be completed on schedule there. And the final project there is one out aerial cable up on Foxhall Road up in Andersonville off Park Road up there. We're kind of now in the pre-construction process on it, which was approved last month, where we are kind of in the right-of-way clearing process again up there. So that's kind of the scope thing, kind of pre-construction, go in, clear all the right-of-way, then begin to get out of the way of the actual construction, start setting poles, probably anticipate within the next month or so. So, any questions on any of those?
Any questions? Right here?
I know since I've been on here, we've talked a lot about kind of this work that you're doing around pulling stuff out of people's yards, in their
Yes.
farms, getting them out to the road. Have y'all? You don't have to answer tonight, but have you been able to? Can you figure out what that's done for us in terms? Because when you're being proactive, you got a history probably of expense of the stuff being back in there. Can you kind of tell how much that long term may save us just because we've moved it out to more accessibility, et cetera?
There is a long-term trend as far as our reliability in this season, because this is a focus we've been doing for the last 20, 25
Right.
years. And it goes into, that's a factor, Flizzr is a factor, but what we have seen over the last 15 years, our reliability numbers have improved by around 70%, both in terms of outages, numbers of outages, and outage durations for the average customer. So this plays a part in it. Everything kind of plays a part in this. Right-of-way clearing as well as Flizzr on those major events as well.
Sure.
So we have definitely seen a process, and a lot of these jobs were built in the 50s and 60s. Like farms, it was just everybody was happy to get power. Shortest route between 2 points. It didn't matter if it goes off the field, out in the swamp, whatever the cheapest cost at the time. The initial build was the way it was put in.
Okay, thank you.
Now, you're building and you got to change a pole out in somebody's field. And I'm telling you, who knew that it took Thresh to come in there and redress that field, because that was the garden paradise for them. It has been, a blade of grass gets rolled over, and we need a whole new yard. It is just tremendous. We started this, and you said 20, 25 years. We started this in October of 1999. The day I became manager, we started moving everything to the street because we troubleshoot from the street. So if you got cable down, you can get that from a truck, boys in the car, because that's the only way we knew. Now with Flizzer, we can at least isolate an area where that fault is. But we don't want to be back in somebody's yard at 2:30 in the morning with a chainsaw trying to get power back on. It is absolutely, in my opinion, it costs more because you're not doing the straight line from A to B. Sometimes you got to do this a little bit to get there. And we've encountered some unique fellas, that's why it's good. We're on state right of way most of the time. One guy said that the EMF was coming off the poles and hitting the school buses, and I mean, he wanted us to go all the way around his house with that, which I told him we had special equipment that kept that from happening that we put on the school buses. So that worked out really well. But yeah, I'm thrilled we're doing that.
Are we anywhere close to getting everything back on the road, or is that just gonna be?
I'll answer, Todd, because you're thinking, because you're trying to be accurate. Yes, yes. The answer is yes. We're getting closer all the time. Just like if you ask if we're getting galvanized out, Greg, are we making progress on that?
Yes.
And he's going to say yes. And I'm telling you, there's galvanized still all over that we're trying to pull out of the ground. But we make a contribution every year. I call it chipping away, but we make a contribution every year to do just that. And all of this money that we're reconductoring, because you see a lot of that. I mean, we've got a lot of projects to reconductor. All of those we bring out to the road. All of those we size in order to support our Flizzer so we can switch. So that costs a lot of money. Now the savings that we average about maybe $70,000 a month, because the winter months are even more, that $48,000 this month. All of that money as we put back in to the system in order to upgrade the system, because we're not borrowing money. I mean, look at what's KUB borrowing, buddy. I mean, and they're trying to do 26% of their system, 26%, and they're borrowing
Initial was $40 million.
$40 million. We didn't borrow anything,
Yeah.
but in order to continue to enhance our system, the savings, because we have a lot of capital outlay, so the savings that we're making off of this, we're reinvesting back in to make this system as tight as it is. But sooner or later, that's going to be done, and then we're going to see those savings pushed back into our general fund. And with that kind of money, I'm hoping to come to you one day and say we can have an actual rate reduction with the savings that we're making off of this. We're using the savings now to enhance our system and provide the quality service that we are. But sooner or later, we're going to hit a point where we've done all
We've done it, yeah.
we've done it. That's
Okay.
right.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on the project? Okay, that doesn't take approval, that's just for information. And now we come to recommendation to City Council to approve tax equivalent payments.
Yes, ma'am. Every year this time we go through a process. It's a pretty substantial calculation, and the state has provided the municipalities to and the government entities to receive a tax equivalent, because we don't pay property tax. And there is the formula that you go through, and every community determines the percentage that they're going to require the utility to pay. We pay 100% of we pay the maximum amount of what's allowed by state in our tax equivalents, and this is represented with this $2.1 million. You see what we did last year, $2,084,000. This year is $2,100,000. and 6,000. It's only a $22,000 increase, but this is the amount that we are going to give out to these taxing districts. Obviously, the lion's share of that is to Clinton, and they'll see a $12,500 increase over what they saw last year. But that works out great, and our partner in the city, I don't know that we've ever had a better relationship and a partnership than we have with them right now, and they are doing I think, a spectacular job in advancing our community, as are these others. But the bottom line is, I recommend the board approve these. This formula, by the way, is audited by TVA to make sure that we haven't made an error, since it's such a big formula to do, and we've never ever had a correction made on this. So this has already been approved by TVA.
Okay, so we don't need the first and second motion, we just need.
We do.
joint-
We need. Yeah, we
Okay.
do.
Okay,
Need a
do we
motion.
have a motion for approval of this, of tax equivalent, for this coming year?
So moved.
And do we have a second?
Second.
And do we have any questions concerning this formula? Okay, hearing none, all in favor say yes. Yes. And that passes, and that brings us to other business, Mr. Fay.
Yes, ma'am. I have four quick things. As we've done for the past several years, we'll be hosting the Anderson County Leadership Class on this upcoming Tuesday. And during the event, we plan to deliver the presentation, which focuses on our three main goals: low rates, great service, and high reliability. It's been, according to Steve Page, who is running this thing, it's the one everybody looks forward to because it's entertaining, you know. And this would be an excellent opportunity for us to showcase how advanced CUB is with our cutting edge technology, such as our virtual power plant and Flizzr. And Steve, Mr. Combs, you educated me on projecting the positive. And I really appreciate that. You did that years ago, and I've been trying to do that because we put out where we stand, what our costs are, what if you live where, depending on where you live, the multiple percentages more that you're paying there than you're paying here. And it's been a surprise. So these generations coming up have a better feel for, my gosh, there is a tremendous difference. And then we go through how the Flizzr works and why they may see a blink and their lights are on. And a lot of our folks around us, they're off for hours and hours and sometimes days. So it's been I think it's a real positive. Going on, Tim West, who is our right-of-way coordinator, and he's an ISA certified arborist. He recently participated with the city of Clinton on Arbor Day celebration by planting a tree with the children at North Clinton Elementary School, and that was on October the 20th. This event not only brings joy to the kids, but also forms a part of CUB's overall right-of-way program. It's what we do. We've always done it, and we've been doing it for 20 years at NARS, and I'm glad that we're able now to work out a participating school within Clinton. And that was received very well, and we've been a member for and recognized by the National Arbor Day Foundation as a Tree Line USA member for over 20 years. Finally, one more after this. On Monday, Todd and I attended a grant presentation along with TVA at Lake City Elementary School. And during the presentation, TVA and Cub awarded the school a grant of $6,700. We're ready to go in the millions, Todd. $6,700. And this grant will be utilized to acquire a new laser cutter for the school's STEM classroom, enhancing the learning experience of the students. We were there last year. We helped them over there this year. And it is a joy to see these kids. If you're worried about the future, you need to go into some of these schools and see some of these little ones coming up. All their lights are on, and they were an absolute delight. So I worked with TVA they needed this grant, and TVA was very accommodating to get that done. So we appreciate TVA a lot. And the folks at Lake City Elementary School appreciate it a lot also. And finally, please save the date if you can. For our annual Christmas luncheon, it will be on Tuesday, December the 5th at noon. And this will be held at the Anderson County Fair Building. That's where you early vote. It's the same place that we were last year. So we know where we're going because I don't want you to come through this front door because we did that for 100 years. At the Anderson County Fair, if your schedule permits, December the 5th, 12 o'clock. We generally have pretty good food there. So you're welcome to come, and that's all I have, Madam Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? We'll start down here. Mr. McBride?
No.
Okay, Mr. Coons?
No, ma'am.
And Mr. Clark?
Nope.
And Mr. McNally?
I don't have any questions, but I did want to bring something up. Doesn't necessarily need an action, but it's something that a few folks have kind of brought to my attention. And it's an opportunity, so don't get
Defensive.
Right.
That's
Nothing bad.
Yeah.
So I think I've had maybe 5 different unsolicited conversations, which is good, of folks interested in broadband from CB. And I think I've been trying to, as I'm coming up to speed, trying to figure everything out. I really wasn't going to bring this up anytime soon, except KUB released a big pat on the back on Sunday in the News Sentinel saying we had a very successful first year. We're doing more, and I mean it was a big fluff piece, really.
LCUB is coming out too.
Right, and it seems like more and more utilities are doing it, especially since COVID. COVID changed a lot with remote learning, remote working. As a full-time remote worker, I could say that I would love to pay CUB instead of Comcast or Xfinity or whatever their name is anymore. And I just wondered when the last time. When did we look at it last?
Probably less than a year ago, when
Okay.
we did a little presentation on that. In a nutshell, if I can encapsulate that as best as a nutshell as I can get, which is not very concise. We focus on our core mission, and that is electric, providing electric. We are a monopoly. In the city, it's water and sewer also, which we are a monopoly. Anytime you get out of that, you're now in direct competition, which to me is a why factor. Why would you go into competition, direct competition, with somebody's whole business is designed to provide that service? And it's not just one company, it's several. You've got options. So is it available to you? And the answer to that, well, yeah, on several fronts, is fiber, because that's what they're getting down to. And I think Morristown, I think it was 28 million. I think Johnson City, and they were talking about 90 million, KUB in the millions, in a technology that is now in the winter. Some could argue the falls easily, but certainly in the winter of its technology. We used to have coax cable strung all over, and now fiber is the way to go. But Elon Musk is putting up satellites. Everything's going to be wireless, you see, coming down. There is utilities in Georgia that are looking for a signal over the current electric line. We have a fiber core which supports our whole system, which we got back in 2001 or two. We negotiated with Comcast to get 8 dark fibers in order to meet our core system. So we didn't pay a penny, not one penny, for our fiber to meet the core requirements in order to communicate with all of the equipment that we have out there. Unlike any other utility anywhere, because TVA wanted us to redo the contract, and if we broke that contract, we could never get back those core fibers. So they saw that there was a unique value to CUB to have that. We don't pay anything for that, haven't paid anything for that. If Comcast closed, we would own their whole system for $1,000. That's in the contract. They want to get out of that contract. So we are unique in that, because systems like KUB, which are now just taking their first steps in advancing in technology. They just finished deploying AMI, advanced metering infrastructure, just a couple of years ago. We've had that since 2005. They were here last month. A group from KUB was here last month because they're trying to figure out how they can put our system and replicate that there. And they're only trying to get 20% of their system by what year?
25 or 26 on
Yeah.
the first. Yeah.
So all of that, and they need the fiber to do that. So there is an argument saying that this is more than just providing internet service, because they need that in order to communicate with this equipment. We don't need that. So there, in order to borrow money to provide internet service to somebody on Buffalo Mountain, because we're now in 6 counties, we're spread out 15 plus 100 miles of line. In order to meet the requirement to service these folks, the reason Comcast isn't doing it is because it's not cost effective. So you've got a small group out here, you've got a small group out here. To serve them, you'll never recover on that. So for Cub, I'm saying, why would we want to expose our ratepayers to this risk of advancing technology when we actually lose our ability? Because if we compete with Comcast, that contract is void. So we're losing the contract of the dark fibers that we already have, and then we would have to borrow millions of dollars and staff millions of dollars, and you can't intermingle funds, so we'd have to get little trucks out there and personnel out there, all to compete with somebody that's been doing it for years and years and years. I can't understand, and I have had this conversation with my colleagues. The thing, Stephen, that is the factor in these people that I talk to is the political push in order to make this happen, because there is then control and the ability to have localized broadband. And I get that, but there is so much weighted because we jumped in so early. And the ones that jumped in early on fiber back in the early 2000, 2005, 6, 7, they've made up their money. But the guys just getting it in now, I fear that they'll not be able. You get 40 to 45% saturation for you to break even. So you're going to have to go out there and get 50% of the customers from Comcast to come over to you. And how are you going to do that? Well, you're going to entice them with the rates, you know. So now you're going to undercut them with the rates, and these are national folks. They're not going to stand for so much of that. They'll be given HBO and everything else free from, forever in order to do that. But you've got to get that kind of saturation just to meet your P&I payments on what you borrow. So we've done a lot of work on trying to make sense of that, and there is no scenario for Clinton, because we're unique in what we already have, that makes good sense.
So you guys, I heard it right. It was last year.
Yeah, about a year ago, and I think we presented to the board
And
because
I had the same thing. I had a couple people ask me about it that were working from home, and it kind of I think we dusted it off because it already been done before then.
we dusted it off several
I think it
times.
was-
We talked about it on my first
Yeah.
first go around too, and I will say that's probably not that I can't I probably have a couple of conversations a month. Different people say different things, some good, some complaining, whatever. But the majority of the conversations that's brought up is high speed internet.
Right.
What's the process? Let me ask you this, just real quick, from a grant standpoint.
Yes.
So grants don't touch hardly any of the capital expense that you
No,
would have
it
to-
does. It does. Grants.
Does it cover because of that infrastructure that has to lay? Are
Absolutely.
those grants available still?
So-
Are they not worth going after?
Yeah.
Or
Jim, I will say, I did look up what the state offers, and through economic think they have a grant, and I think it's the application period might be a couple of times a year. It's not very much. It's up to $100,000.
Yeah, of course, that wouldn't buy a
That's
cell
where
phone, you know.
that was my question. Are there
But no,
grants
there-
that make a
there-
dent
there
in the
are-
investment?
We could get better than that, Stephen. There are grants, and obviously that any grant money offsets, and if you're lucky, you get a 50-50 match.
Right.
So if you're talking at 1,500 miles, and I don't know what the cost per
What would,
do,
I mean,
but
just throw,
well,
throw a number out there.
Just
I mean,
I'll,
plus or minus.
a given scope from I've talked to several who are into that is that you can almost look at investing what the value of your electric plant is. If our electric plant's costing $100 million, we're looking at about $100 million investment. KUB's got about $800 million on their electric plant. The investment in fiber is about $700 million. I've seen some numbers they're going to invest in
And I
that.
think the other thing you got to remember is, and we do a lot of technology replacement of the hospital. You also got to remember how long is it's not like it's a 30-year depreciable life.
Right, the life cycle
Network,
on internet
switches,
equipment
years, and
is
all
very
that stuff is
It's 3 to 5 years.
yeah.
Yeah.
You're going to turn it over to keep up, and so I think that what yeah, I think there are grant monies out there. I mean,
it is.
we can find grant money. You look at particularly the USDA seems to want to run stuff all over the place. They did that in Fentress. They've done several other rural counties particularly. But I think the challenge is it's kind of like a lot of other things. They lure you in with a low price, and all of a sudden now you got to incur the maintenance. And I'm more worried about the maintenance cost years 3 through 7 than I am probably getting the initial off the ground and cobbling together some stuff. I mean, $100 million is a big number. Don't get me wrong. I get you there.
Yes.
But then you got every 3 to 5 years you're reinvesting because you're an IT guy, kind of, aren't you? I thought so. I mean, that'll kill you on the technology replacement. So
Yeah, I've always been curious ever since KUB announced it and when Morristown announced it now, LCB. I don't understand how they're running it. Are they staffing up? Are they
They
contracting
have to
out?
because they can't do this.
Right.
Morristown's not happy. Morristown, I think their biggest fault that I know of, for the folks I know there, is television. I think they wish they'd never got into the television business.
And I think
The
that
streaming business or the internet type stuff
Yeah.
is different, but stay away, run from the television.
and that's from one of those like Morristown who have been in it for 20 years now. I've talked to a number of others that are across the valley who are in the same situation. When they first got into it, there were 3 revenue streams. You had the internet, you had TV, and you had telephone even at the time. 2 of those have gone away. Now, internet's really the only one in the bunch because everybody's streaming on TV that's going that way now. So 2 of your 3 revenue streams even have gone away.
Again, which goes to the winter of the technology.
Yeah.
We are in the cycle of the next new invention on that. I worry about these people I care a lot about, where they're investing $700 million into a technology that is already crested. You see,
Well, and I think the point you made too, you can get Verizon service here now, internet service.
that's right.
And that, wireless is
you
growing.
can get it, and so the problem is that's going to continue to develop as technology develops. So
People get 5G on their phone. You know,
Yeah,
I mean, you
it's great. We kind of and you kind of look at it and you're like, okay, I think you're right. I think kind of pause a little bit and just kind of let it see where it develops. But the technology replacements will kill.
since
The O&M has. I mean, I would love to see what they're incurring each year at these other utilities, just because I'm fascinated by it. But I think even outside of that contract that CB has with Comcast, that's
it's a
a
killer.
killer.
It's a killer.
Right off the top.
It is.
Yes.
How many of those fibers are
Nobody else has that. I mean, we had a show at the TVA. I mean, they didn't believe it. You know, I presented that at the TVPPA, and nobody has got that. We could, especially since Dusty's young, I could take over Kroger's, and we could do a better job managing that than they did because of the quality of people that we would put on that. But it makes no sense to do that. We can do a better job than some of these companies, especially for profit companies out there, we can do a better job. I'm convinced we can do a better job on high-speed internet. But now you got a storm event, and you're trying to put power back up, right? My internet's down. I mean, I don't know how that would work, but I don't think it would work too good. Core business, focus on your core business, you know, and the other, to invest that much and then have that risk out there for technology that's going, and the competition is already out there, and you've jumped out from being a monopoly to being a competitive company.
Yeah, the other point that you brought up, and I think it's a good one. We have an obligation, fiduciary responsibility, to service all of our customers,
Right.
all of our service area, and the cost per foot in Clinton, which makes a lot of sense,
Right.
probably, is a lot different than the cost per foot going up into the hollers.
Right. Yeah.
And so, and then let alone the maintenance. So I think when you look, you look at it kind of, anyway. So, I'll
Well, I am going to, at our city council meeting, I'm going to mention this particular meeting about the fact that, some of the biggest questions we get is CUB and high-speed internet. And if the customers and the citizens want to tune in, this is a good meeting to tune into to
Correct.
get maybe some of those questions answered as to why CUB is not traveling down that road
Good idea.
currently.
Todd,
Yes, sir.
could you give a copy of your latest white paper to anybody who hadn't seen it yet?
Yes, sir.
It would-
And
Be
we
glad
probably
to
got a couple
send that
people
to
who
you.
haven't seen it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
The other
Yeah.
thing is this one of those things, I mean, back to the Steve Combs proactiveness here. Is there any value of talking to the paper about why? Because, I mean, is that an article in the paper to kind of help?
I
Anyway,
talked
that
to,
help
what's his
y'all,
name?
or-
Is his name Tony? Tony?
Yeah.
Yeah, Tony Cox. I talked to him. It's amazing. Probably Tuesday. And in that conversation, we talked about this, and
Oh, okay.
I asked him to come up. You know,
I think a lot of times, I think, and I've encouraged the city a lot of times because I think those guys are overworked and understaffed and writing things. Maybe send out a press release. I mean, I don't know if that's something.
see,
that
one of the
warrant-
things
I
that
don't-
we
I don't
would
know
have
that
to
sort of press
identify
release.
in the public, in the paper, is the fact that we have this provision in the contract, which I'm not really.
You sure you want out there?
That's correct.
I mean, honestly, all things aside, that is the strongest argument to
Right.
not
Right.
go that route. Even if you wanted to dip your toe into a edge market or
Right.
something that's not your core, you can.
You
To
would
replace
start
that
out-
infrastructure for Flizzr and everything else, it would.
Correct.
Don't want to mess
You're
up
starting
a
over
good thing.
basically.
And you'd have to have that in place tomorrow,
right.
the very day that it was announced.
Right.
You know, on the other hand, I don't know a soul in Clinton who wouldn't leave Comcast like that if they had an
Oh,
opportunity.
yeah.
Oh, myself
If you opened that
included.
business, You could get the business.
I don't know that that's true, Steve, because it gets down to the folks. They need a big push. Now, the ones that are mad, yeah, but they won't be happy. I mean, there's going to be outages everywhere. You see, so they're only going to be so happy. We wouldn't be able to. You call up Comcast. I'm going to just take me off just a minute. Boom. Hello. What do you need? I'll give you anything you want. We can't do that because we'd have to treat everybody the same. You see, so if we're going to give you HBO for 2 years, as like a freebie, we got to do that for everybody. You see, because we don't discriminate between classes.
At least when we answer the phone, it would be in English and it would be somebody.
That's true.
Okay, I think what I've gotten from all of this is that, Jim, you're going to encourage people to tune into this meeting to get those questions answered, but we're not gonna go down the road of any stir the pot of news releases. So
And we're going to
we'll-
provide
Yeah,
Stephen with a white paper.
yeah, and
Thank you.
Send it out to all of you.
won't mess up the good deal that we've got that way. That okay with everybody?
Yes, ma'am.
We're good. Stephen, that answer all your
Yes.
questions? Okay. The only last thing, was that everything, Greg, that you had?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Only thing I want to say to Dusty is on behalf of the board, welcome. We're glad to have you in the family, and I know administrative team have already said that. We're just adding our glad you're here too bad.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Okay, meeting is adjourned.
We're getting